Hello there. Hello. Good evening. And welcome to the live stream, the stream of live. And hopefully you guys can hear me. Hopefully things are working. I am reasonably confident that they are. I'll just move this over here. There we go. That way I can see comments, etc., etc. Hey, all good. Good stuff. Hello, Michelle Franklin, aka on over on Twitch, Mendel's mum. Nice to see you. I'm glad that you're here. And I just want to start off this evening's proceedings, if we can. Let me just move something else there, because I need to be able to see. Yeah, okay. This evening's proceedings, just acknowledging that this is the first moot that we've done where our good buddy Nolan hasn't been available, hasn't been able to submit an entry. And I just want to say I hope he's okay. I hope that you're doing okay, Nolan, and that we absolutely adore and are thinking about you over on the Discord server, and of course here during these moots. Lukewarm coffee. Chainmail shirt, tip top. It's actually a Guinness shirt. It's got a Guinness logo on it. There you go. There's a harp and everything. No, but yeah, granted, it looks a wee bit like chainmail. Happy New Year, Never Wise. Nice to see you. And hello, Lord Engine. Good evening. Good evening. Well, I suppose good night, technically. Technically speaking, but good night sounds like a parting as opposed to a greeting. Yeah. So this year we have 2 entries in our midwinter moot, and once again, apologies that I wasn't able to do the moot on Christmas. Not on Christmas, sorry, on the planned day and between Christmas and New Year. Life and weather and stuff got in the way, but we're here, and we're still very much within the 12 days of Christmas, so I think it still counts. I've got my reading glasses. I think we're pretty much good to go. And these 2 stories, one of them is rats! I did the calculation. Hang on, let me just check. I meant to write it down. I think the number is 82. Let me just confirm this with my my calculator here. Yeah, 82. So one of them is in fact, as requested, a word has a word count that is a multiple of 12, and that is 82 times 12, which, boys and girls at home, is a total of 984 words. So well done to Lord Engine, Glenn, on that one. You have done very well, getting a 12 days of Christmas, multiple of 12. The other, submitted by the ever excellent Michelle Franklin, given that I did put an upper word limit of 1,200 words, again, multiple of 12, came in at an unashamed 1,355 words. And that's not counting the title. But hey, I know that you were busy and you were up long hours to get that one finished. So I'm not going to complain. Had to read that thing on an online word counter. Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, it worked. Well done. So on that note, I commend you. You've been very attentive in your word count. Uh, Try to exactly, and it's it's not a strict thing. I'm not that cruel. So yeah, I did mean to write something myself this year, but unfortunately, again, life and events, dear boy, events. Um, but we'll talk a little bit more about this year and the turning of the year, uh, either between or after the stories. So the first one, I'm going to read Lord Engines first. Give you a chance to settle down, Michelle, following your work up until a few minutes ago. And this first one, it's called Smithson, which is quite interesting. Smithson by Glenn Gleeson, aka Lord Engine. Smithson is the name one of my ancestors gave him. He's uttered his real one but once in my presence. It's an agglutination, an agglutinated series of growls and barks, vaguely approaching the vicinity of almost sounding like Smithson, something like that. So, I accept the wisdom of my forebears. The kids just call him the Christmas Goblin, because his unfailing knock usually comes around that time. This year Smithson did not knock, however, but appeared in the back garden where I was puttering about in the little greenhouse that we keep. Looking a little long in the tooth, aren't you, Gracie? Now, I'm sorry if that's unintelligible, but, that is Smithson. I turned to see the diminutive form in the door, tweed-clad with a flat cap. He looked sort of like an early 20th century newsboy with a Habsburg jaw. The goblin had pointed ears, slightly translucent skin, and two pupilless blue buttons for eyes. There was no mistaking him for human. Grandkids now, I muttered affably, as I could. Oh, that's fine, he said. I'll have to meet 'em, Gov. Got any sweet dog? I fancy a drink. In the kitchen I poured an absurdly long glug of brandy into the kid-friendly stuff. The kitchen is one of the few truly modern areas in the sprawling pile that is the Gracie house, and has the fortune of being central to the place. Unfortunately, it meant that as we trudged to the sitting room, and it attracted the maximum amount of attention, particularly from the house's younger visitors, of which there were currently 2. Neither of the kids had before met Smithson, and they stared as if they could not believe the confirmation of the family myth. Gracie folk are, after all, a naturally sceptical sort. I'm hearing Circus Gollum. Fair enough. Your hair's on fire, shouted the kids, almost in unison, as Smithson doffed his cap to them. That was quite an achievement, as Smithson doesn't have any hair. His scalp was indeed alight. Oh no! I knew I should have stapled it. Was indeed alight. Chaos. Yep, we're good. Oh, he cried, startled, and quickly covered his head again. He launched himself into the reclining chair like a wilful toddler. What brings you here this year? I asked, though of course I knew. The answer was always the same. I seek the dream, he said rather formally. I know I will find it here, but I know not when. Do you wish to wake the house? I do, for I am an archaeologist of dreams. You may do so, and look for the dream. You know that you may see unpleasant things, even, it seems, your own death. I know, I'm ready. With that, the formalities were over. As it happens, there are a number of dusty animal heads in the sitting room. We find them distasteful, but it would seem a minor blasphemy to the ambience of the place to cart them off to the attic, to gather more dust in silence. As if to announce his disdain for formalities, Smithson made them talk. It was a good life, said the buck. Yes, it was, agreed the does. Oh, aye, confirmed another doe, empathetically. Smithson swears up and down that this particular buck is the monarch of the glen, usually after he's had a second helping of nog. Smithson waved a small hand lazily, and the house awoke. It's impossible to describe the temporal vertigo that happens when Smithson does this, his thing. So then I suppose it felt like what Tone might expect, tumbling down through the centuries, ought to feel like. There was a thud as the goblin propelled himself from the chair and made to find the dream. I too wondered. Staples. I should have stapled. Some of the mustachioed ghosts I recognised from previous years, and some were wholly unfamiliar. My descendants, perhaps. I saw Humphrey Gracie and his man hanging one of the deer heads fresh from the taxidermist. That was fleeting. The elder Gracie turned to say something to the other gentleman and was gone. Such vignettes might be interesting to humans, but a respectable dream archaeologist hunts for the persistent patterns. Sorry, there was a slight break in the text there. It was a paragraph break between dream and archaeologist there. But a respectable dream archaeologist hunts for the persistent patterns. A fortunate side effect of this is that moments of awful unhappiness tend toward brevity during one of these excavations. Almost without warning, Smithson came bounding back into the sitting room, loafers pounding staccato on the parquet. An image was forming in the room's centre space, as at first a murky yellow and gradually resolving into an amalgamation of sorts. People gathered round the fireplace, but no particular people. It was sort of an ideal Gracie family, celebrating some ideal Christmas. I knew then that I was looking at the memory of the house. Smithson's dream, as it were. No, the goblin said. I must have muttered something, unless he was reading my mind. It's only part of the dream. There's more to be found, but I hope to have plenty of booze. I am so going to celebrate after I finish my report. Has anyone ever actually seen their own death, during one of your vision quests, or whatever? I asked. Awakenings. And yes, once. It was very, very unpleasant. Just try not to die at home, Gov. Simple as that. Well, that's easy for an immortal to say. Indefinite is not the same as infinite, oh gracious Gracie. What's the point of collecting these dreams? They don't seem to be all that interesting, for all that these phantoms seem to be enjoying the moment. We do it... Oh, sorry. For all that these phantoms seem to be enjoying the moment. We do it for the same reason that humans fondly remember days gone by. It's about collective effect. It's utterly fascinating in itself. The dream is like a track furrowed into the essence of this place. As was his custom, Smithson stayed for the holiday, and a little after, he made the house a better place while he was around, though I was quite clear that any incidents like the time he had pulled a boa from someone's ear and it had stalked the house for the better part of 2 decades would not be tolerated. Finally, one day in early January, Smithson left again. I like that story. It's cool. Apologies for tripping up there. I did read this through. It's just I kept on forgetting about that paragraph break there. Wonderful though. Thank you. And as ever, I'm appreciating the tendency to make these sort of broader archaeological connections. So I think was it at Halloween? Was it your story? I think Lord Engine that was examining an alternate America, an alternate history, and someone being alarmed at discovering these differences and cataloguing them, and then finding no, that's right. They found that their colleague had been cataloguing them, hadn't they? So yeah, really canny. I like it. And very inventive. So in fact, I want to know more. It makes me want. Oh, that wasn't yours. Sorry. But in these moots, I like the creative archaeological divergence that people use and bring to bear using the theme. And in this instance, I particularly enjoy this idea of this, because initially, you get the sense that the visitor is going to be quite potentially scary, going to demand something from the family. Maybe it's the result of a curse, this kind of thing. But you went down a different route. It's something feels a bit something in between an academic, a census taker, and I don't know, and a festive spirit, but clearly that's attached to this family and maybe some others. Yeah, almost wrote it longer, but I was like punchier. I think it was good. I think it was punchy enough. It got the scenario across beautifully, and personally, I would encourage you to write more if you have a broader story in mind. It's good stuff. I always forget how to pronounce the werewolf's name. Sorry, as we move on to the second story by Michelle, A Timely Visitor. Is it Adawan? I always trip up on that one. But I'm willing to get going, and maybe we can get a phonetic. Aegon, thank you. There you go. Aegon. Adawan. Where do I think it's Adawan? Oh yeah, no, I can see Aegon there. Yeah. It's that darned Irish spelling. Right, here we go. Or Aegon. I quite like Aegon. Yeah. Right, here we go. A great many things kept happening. Some of them good, some of them mindle. Despite what some might have implied in the past, Mindle was not the harbinger of bad news. It was only that if he appeared somewhere without warning, people often began screaming a few seconds later. Mindle wasn't overly fond of shouting. He lived with orphan children, and they knew how to make a noise when they wanted to be noticed. But professions to God were certainly acceptable and certainly welcomed. especially if those professions were asking God to do something in a very pretty way. Mendel was taking in some kindling from the small wood beside the abbey, and he was thinking. Mendel always thought actively about things, and in a manner which always unnerved the abbot, because his thinking had an audible component to it. His mind moved on purpose, his mouth moved by accident, and his voice did whatever the other two believed was a good idea. At this moment, he thought that thinking about his birthday was a good idea. It's only December the 5th, which means that we are 20 more days until my birthday, he calculated. I love my birthday because I always forget it's about to happen. And then when it does come upon me so suddenly, I'm always delightfully surprised. We're so busy preparing for the winter, and the days go so fast. And then Sister Larlaith makes frumently, and suddenly it's my birthday. Whenever the other children celebrated a birthday, they liked doing cake about it. But Mendel's greatest joy in life was Sister Larlaith's frumenty. He liked his puddings as anybody else, but it was that she made them, and she knew he liked it, that made it special. It was that she made them and knew that he liked it, that made it special. On December the 25th, in the year 916 AD, it should be AD 916, Yala, thank you, Yala, a child was born, one to bring love and light to some people and headaches to everybody else. Nobody called it Mindlemas because there was no mass dedicated to him, but it was Mendel's birthday. His mother had always said he was a gift from God, but his father thought otherwise, and said that Mendel was spawned from a hole in the ground, one he was always desperate to throw him back into. Instead, when Mendel was 5 years old, his father gave him to the abbey, and made Mendel everyone else's problem. He was currently thinking aloud to God, which made him God's problem. How I love the winter holidays, said Mendel, taking up some kindling. Everybody is always so cheerful, especially around my birthday. I know everyone likes celebrating your son being born into the world, but the good book doesn't tell us when he was born, and I find it interesting that your son and I should have a birthday on the same day. Isn't it curious? Someone hemmed, as though they were only partially paying attention. Yes, said a voice in the background. Interesting. Mendel paused, as if paused. If he was so important to you and to the world, God, why didn't you tell us when your son was born? God thought it would be more amusing that way. But everybody's always arguing over it. Yes. Came the voice. Now, just make sure I don't drop the wrong page. There we go. I've heard some people say his birthday was really in January, but I don't think that's likely because most people are born in the spring or summer when the stalks come in. Even more curious, Mendel wondered why God had only ever had one son. There were rumours of others, but Brother Vindimir told him that nothing good at all came from people named James, and so he forgot about it. Mendel had always wondered why God had only one son, but something or other always interrupted him. He was busy with work, or was busy making people regret themselves. He was gathering kindling and withies, meditating on the past year, looking forward to the next, thinking about Sister Yarlas, saying that this year had got away from her, though Mendel always felt he knew exactly where this year was. When he came upon a large mound of something dark, damp, and fuming. Oh, I get the James joke. I get the James joke. Was it works? Oh, it's faith by works, isn't it, James? Or works showing the quality of faith. The idea of also prosperity often gets criticised for being prosperity gospel. Anyway. Oh, said Mindle, eyeing the fumants charily. Ooh, fumets charily. I'd never met one that fresh before, or that concentrated. I wonder what animal did that. Was it a bear, do you think, God? Mindle thought God was a compassionate and devoted friend, when God was really a preoccupied and self-interested being. God is busy. The voice sounded significantly disgruntled. God is losing at dice. I thought you said gambling was only allowed on feast days, Mindle reminded him. It was a feast day tomorrow, but given that it was the morning of the eve of something, God made every extenuation, especially when he was ahead. God made him no answer, but a shadow rose and mantled Mindle from behind. A familiar shadow that had an enormous but friend-shaped outline. Friend-shaped, isn't that lovely? Is that one of yours, Aegon? Mindle asked, pointing to the large mound ahead. The shadow stepped forward into a streak of white winter light. It looked like a mountain of muscles with a handsome face attached. Aegon inspected the fumets and almost laughed. Mm. My wolf doesn't have, he paused to think of a word, emissions. Even in my human form, I couldn't do that. Oh. Mindle eyed the mound and slowly realised. Well, that's rather unsettling then, he said cheerfully. Aegon considered the animals that they had around the abbey and knew that none of them could leave behind what looked like a teeming molehill. The only other person besides himself who was large enough to do that was Brother Canach, and though one of the oldest members of the abbey, he was long since house-trained. Well, Mindle said eventually, whatever did that, I'm sure it's moved on by now, else you would have sensed it. I'll bring these withies in and help Brother Windermere with the washing before the holiday sets in. Aegon surveyed the woodland and followed the tidal path with his gaze. What holiday is today? The Feast of St. Nicholas, said Mindle, with a thrill in his voice. All the brothers and sisters always love this feast day because all the children go to sleep early, and if they're very good and very quiet, there's a little gift for them in their shoes in the morning. Not notably from Odin. Oh, interesting. The Nissa, who was in the byre milking his cow, popped his head out. It was me, he cried, wringing his tiny fist. I'm one what brings weans their gifts. It's really Sister Yarlath, said Brother Canach. Mindle explained. They knit things and make toys for the children, but the Nissa puts on his red hat and goes about pretending to be a gift giver. Do you have the custom in the ossuary, Aegon? Ossuary, Aegon? Not that I remember, said Aegon, smiling. We do have stories of the Calais, the winter hag who goes around with her bundle of firewood, and anyone caught in her way either dies or is cursed to age faster than everyone else. But you're already cursed, Mendel mused, and tugged his lower lip. So which part of you would be cursed, the wolf bit or the human bit? I don't know. I've never seen her. Do you think that we can find her and convince her to come here? Because our ghosts would do get lonely from time to time, and it would be a nice thing for them to have friends. Which reminds me, it's nearly time for their treats. Mendel moved off to the graveyard and began clapping his pockets. A chill settled over the graves, and all of a sudden, wooed out of the mist. I've got them for you. No, said Mendel, swatting a spectral hand away. That one's not yours. That's Brother Boulder's. Mendel began spreading the crumbs like fish flakes, and the ghastly hands gloomed for them, leaving Aegon to wonder who had left the steaming gift for them in the woods. It had an ethereal scent trailing off it, one that seemed to transcend the space it occupied, as though its heady aroma reached backwards and forwards through time. Fantastic, and thank you so much for your submission. What I need to do is get into the habit of just messaging you before I read these things and just saying, this word here, how can no, thank you very much. That's wonderful, and presumably part of a larger project that you're writing. It seems that often the Mendel stories are little vignettes. Phonetic guide, please. Exactly. Yes, that would be grand. Christmas poo for everyone. We growing up there was this interesting thing where the fields up in the Vale would often frost and or snow over in the winter, and people would go sledding in and around Christmas, New Year, and the real risk, because depending on how low the frost was and how high in that sense the animals were willing to go, they hadn't always been brought in, because it wasn't just sheep nearby us, there was also cows and bulls. Essentially you would get little landmines, these little frozen brown cakes that were camouflaged in the fields, and you'd never quite know what you were going to hit. So you might go for a walk and get a nice surprise. You might go on a sled and get an even worse surprise. So Christmas poo for everyone is not far off the mark. For certainly for my recollection of a Christmas in and around the Vale of Clwyd, and Prestatyn in particular. Well, Prestatyn up on the hill. Been there, but it's California, so they're not frozen. Well, usually they aren't frozen. Yeah. And you know what? There's a TV series that we've been watching, consuming, in fact, called The Traitors. It's quite popular here in the UK. I think it started in the Netherlands. There's an Australian version. There's a New Zealand version. I think there's a US version as well. All slightly different, but the UK version has this moment in the first season where one of the contestants is from Wales. She's from I think she's from Pontypridd actually, but anyway, she's not as far as I could tell, someone who's necessarily a farmer. So she's lived in the countryside. She knows a little bit about stuff, but basically she's not. There's no reason for her to definitely know something. but as they're doing one of these challenges, they come across this they're rolling a barrel up a hill, and it goes through some smelly mud, and you got this woman from somewhere in the southeast of England go, we were going up this hill, and then suddenly everything just stank of shit. It was horrible, and the Welsh person, she says, "Oh, that's pig shit. That is. Oh, definitely pig shit." And and it was, it was one of those weird things where I was offended at what happened next, but then also you kind of go, but yes, I guess she did know. So she said, "Oh, I figured that she would know what that smell was. Being from Wales and all, I believe that she knows about different smells." I was like, "Oh God, the subtle." I don't even know how you describe that, but okay, at the very least, the caricaturing of what it is to be from Wales, coming up out of the depths of English Welsh relations that were right there. Yeah, I think I knew. It's just so initially I looked over to Mrs. Soup and we looked at each other like, that is that broadcast? Why did they broadcast that? And the English audience wouldn't really think about it as being an issue. But it was kind of funny because, I also know the smell of certain types of shite, having come from Wales. But, you shouldn't just presume. Like, you shouldn't just... I say there, you're backwards. You're from one of those places on the edge of the island. You must know what. Tell me, what is the consistency of this poop? What does it tell you about the animal? I don't rightly know actually. Take a closer look. Yeah, I don't know. Because no, that's the thing. I think the thing is, though, a lot of Wales isn't farmland. That's it. So I think it obviously in their minds, in people's minds, Wales is a lush green place with lots of farms. But she's from memory, she's from Pontypridd, which is a relatively industrial town. You don't have to know what the countryside is like, being from there. In the same way that I don't know what it's like to be in a coal mine, if that's what I mean. I've seen coal mines, and I've been into coal mines, but I haven't worked in a coal mine. That is where Tom Jones is from, yeah. And it's it just struck me as funny because actually she was kind of right, but also at the same time it was just like, you should. They have pigs and cows in England. When you pass the farms here, all our farmers say, "You smell that shit? Smells like money." Yeah, I can. Yeah. It's certainly good for saving on having to add to your fields in terms of fertilizer, that kind of thing. So I wish you to augur the health of this animal. Exactly. Yeah. I say, Jones, come here. Yes, sir. How can I help you, sir? Augur the health of this animal. Well, can I see the beast, sir? No, you can't see the beast. No. Here are its droppings. They are unusually dense. A bit like me, sir. Sorry. I apologise. Yeah. Interestingly, the cows in England. Well, actually, I have a postcard. You can't see it on the wall behind me, where it's sheep on either side of the English-Welsh border, and the Welsh sheep are going, "Bore da, good morning," and the English sheep are looking at them like, So I'm sure they do. They probably do have the equivalent of different accents, different moos, and bleats. But the Frisian cows, especially across the border in Cheshire, across the border from where I'm from, rumor has it, were introduced possibly by some of my ancestors. Some are in that massive block of humanity that we're all from. Seemingly, brought some of them over. The Frisian cows from Frisia. The sheep in the south sound rich. Well, it depends. The sheep in the south of England would probably sound rich. The sheep in the south of Wales would probably sound rounded, I think. They would sound rounded, yeah. But Moot. Oh, that's a good question as well. How the different ways that different cultures represent the noises of animals is always interesting, isn't it? I've talked about this before, but the sound of a sheep people often think is, bah, but actually it doesn't. That's not what they sound like. They sound more like a meh. It's like a ma sort of sound, almost to the point of freaking you out. It can sound literally like a person is behind that hedge over there shouting at you. But the noises that people I'm trying to think of some examples. I know that for example, Japan has some excellent examples of how they think the cat or the dog or the cow or the sheep sounds is it's quite beautiful actually, because you get a little sort of sense of how people's, in that sense, how their ears are working with language and with culture and so on and so forth, because of how they hear, and also I guess how they can also represent in their own language the sounds that they think that they're hearing. In Japan, a doggy is a wan. Russian cats too. Okay, interesting. Oh, hello, Cylon. Good evening. But yeah, I remember often being freaked out. See, there you go. I'm doing it again. I'm now proving the point, because I lived next to basically a sheep field, and I would walk across a donkey field to get to school, even though I was in a fairly urban transitioning into a hilly farmland landscape by the beach. So, okay, fine. Fine, maybe there's a reason that the Welsh person knew what poo smelled like. Yeah, exactly. Like notes on music with written sounds, exactly. Yeah, and whereas the sort of the long journey towards formal notation for music was that sort of process of narrowing down. This is how we're going to do it. This is what this means. This is what, the timing and this key signatures and so on and so forth. The act of I was going to say domestication. That's not the word. Standardization is a thing. Whereas language doesn't really require that of different cultures when it comes to animals. We don't have to have standardized animal noises, because it's not. Hopefully, anyway, it's never going to be crucial for international communication to say, "What does the fox say?" It has to do with how different sounds are represented in different languages. Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, this isn't an animal noise, but for example, the shabu shabu, the noise supposedly of thin strips of beef as they're being heated in hot broth, and you're sort of slapping the meat around with your chopsticks. Shabu shabu isn't. There's a cultural component to people agreeing on those, because you might say splish splash or splosh or something like that in an English to an English ear or to an English speaker's ear. Um, uh, so it is about how the sounds are represented, but it's also about the the consensus of what the onomatopoeia actually is in that sense. Because the shabu shabu is, you can hear it. You can hear shabu shabu. You can hear it sort of, and there's an element of the bubbling as well in there, I think. But it's still a decision. It's a cultural decision that's made as to this sounds like this to us. It also might remain a stranded onomatopoeia even if after the language itself changes. Okay, yeah. English sounds follow umlaut repudication. No, repudication. Bing, bong, tick, tock, etc. You can figure out how to enunciate more accurately because they are intentionally used for tonality. Ah, yes. Okay, yep. I see. Following on with the music, with the sorry, yeah, with the notes on music and the written words thing there. Yeah. Umlaut reduplication. Sorry, repud. Sorry, that's the dyslexia kicking in. Reduplication. Umlaut reduplication. That's a cool phrase. It's almost like you have the files, Michelle. It's almost like she knows. Each language's own music. Yeah, and I think it's for my part one of the reasons I'm glad that my voice is sort of, it's taken a step back from what it was like when I was in my early to late 20s, well, mid to late 20s, having come fresh out of Durham University, when I was much more sort of, hello, my name is Mark, and we're going to learn about today, and yeah. I'm glad that I've sort of settled more into having lived in York for a bit and having just become more comfortable in myself. The vowels and the way of speaking that that I had when I was a kid is closer to how I talk today, I think. But it's all affected, and actually, I think as Michelle has said elsewhere, that people have different voices in different scenarios in that sense, and we all deploy. I have a friend who calls it different heads. So it's almost like, so on the phone you might suddenly sound formal, whatever that means, where you're from, or when speaking to a senior, a boss, or an older member of the family, compared to how you sound when I'm hanging out with a bunch of kids from the West End of Newcastle, my voice does change. I've definitely noticed that. It's important, even within language, to be able to do that. Otherwise, I don't know. Either you or the person listening to you is less likely to feel comfortable. Umlaut sounds like the world's most mediocre mass-produced beer. Yeah. Umlaut, probably the world's most mediocre mass-produced beer. Probably. I don't know. I'm not sure if that would translate. There's a whole Carlsberg. Was it Carlsberg? Yeah, it was Carlsberg advert that used to be here in the UK, where it was like probably the world's best lager, and they'd apply it to other things. So probably the world's best, I don't know, underwear maker, and they'd have Carlsberg people making underwear, and it'd be terrible. But because it was Carlsberg, it was probably the best. Tonality tends to run in families too, like fathers, sons sounding similar, but not sure how much it's environmentally related. I think we do an awful lot of there's mimicry. There's also an aspect of not just mimicking, but also empathizing with the person that you're hearing and talking to, and almost by mirroring, taking on a perspective of their socio-cultural bubble. So I find myself being a little bit more Northern Irish when the in-laws are here. Not dramatically, but there's a little bit more sort of, a little bit more slightly that kind of thing going on. Just a touch, not much. And also the rate of speaking changes, the rate of words, that is to say, and the dialect that you use as well shifts depending on who you're talking to. But it's all because that's what you're hearing, and it's also because you're wanting. It's a fascinating sociocultural thing to observe, but it makes perfect sense. In that sense, it is at its most basic. I once heard an anthropologist say, at its most basic, if the baby doesn't smile, then it's more likely to be ignored. And so in that sense, if you don't have an element of mimic when someone smiles at you, or when they give you something that's important to them, whether that's language or the tone of their language, or the dialect, the inflection, the seriousness. There's so many. Obviously, there are as many connotations to language as there are words, I guess you could say. But if you're not mimicking that, if you're not actually giving that back, and even psychopaths learn this, they recognize that it's important, even though they can't necessarily feel certain aspects of this sort of socio-cultural bonding. If you don't do that, then you feel as though you're not fitting in, but also you will not fit in. And it's one of the most amazing things that our minds, our brains, our physiology tends to do. And I've always been fascinated by it. It's interesting though as well, and I'm pretty sure that Michelle has possibly talked about this in the past over on TikTok. It's interesting as well how people tend to develop a sort of narrative about themselves based on what their voice has done in the past and where it's going, and there's also an element of, depending on, again, on prevailing winds, culturally speaking, there can be an aspect of shame. So the other day I was talking to someone who comes from the Bristol area, and people often, like, a really stereotypical thing would be like, I'm a farmer and I'm from down southeast and southwest, sorry, and I like cider. And people, it's the sort of thing that people also will think of as being a pirate's accent, and that's not how they sounded at all. At all, the Bristolian accent is different to that. And they have this wonderful phrase, which is a proper job, where if something's done properly, if something is done well. There's actually a beer, there's an IPA that I had once when I was down in Exeter, not too far away, called Proper Job, and I loved it. And I was saying, don't you relish this? Don't you enjoy Gert Lush as well? Gert Lush is a phrase that comes from that part of the world, which means, if something is really, really good, it's very lush. It's very, I guess up here you might say canny in the northeast of England. But they weren't. They as much as they sort of took pride in aspects of the culture that they knew, and the food that they ate, and the history of the place that they're from. They were working as hard as they could to drop any semblance of that accent, because it's associated with being slow, with being ignorant, so not only being unable to learn, but having never tried to learn in the first place about the world. And it's a shame. I guess you could say it's like I don't know, Georgia, Alabama, or something. It's the sort of thing that some people try and drop in the US when they move for work purposes or whatever. They'll try and have like a more standardized voice. But we were talking about this, and I was saying uh, how I recognized that in so much as when I went off to uni, lots of people were down on me for even just the way I would say uni, as opposed to uni, or huge instead of huge. Um, but that eventually, hopefully, they would find a love of that, and that they would recognize that actually this mother tongue, in that sense, this tongue of where you come from, is part of you, and it can be added to, and it will change, and those changes are not to be ashamed of. And likewise, there's a certain aspect of, and sorry if I'm rambling on here, folks. I noticed that the chat's kind of stopped, but likewise, there's sort of a there's an inverse relationship there as well, where people talk about authenticity. They talk about uh, so for some people in my extended family from Liverpool, um, when they've moved around the country and they sort of lose what they consider to be a true Scouse accent or a true Liverpudlian voice, depending on what part of Liverpool they're from, incidentally, then they go, "Oh, I don't really have an accent anymore. It's rubbish. It's gone away now." But give them 5 minutes, give them maybe a little bit of social lubrication or even alcoholic lubrication, and it comes back. And the same goes for me. As when I was a kid, whenever I went to Liverpool, it didn't take long to bring out a bit of a Scouse accent in me, and frankly, there's a bit of Scouse in my voice anyway. It's there in the Northeast Wales area, and of course, it was there in my family. Um, but I think we're moving hopefully towards a world where you're more likely to have people accepting, and as you say, Michelle, everyone has an accent, and accepting that those accents are in some ways a story. They are in some ways a record of where we've been and where we're going, and in some cases how we want to be perceived. Um, but also as well, they that there's a beauty there. That um, there's something vital about them. Uh, One bad thing that happened in recent years, though, is that here in the UK, the prominent voice at the BBC, a guy called Hugh Edwards, he was a bit of a hero of mine growing up. He was because he was this I think he was Pontypridd actually as well, Southeast Wales accent, reading the news every night from London. National news, not regional news or national news in Wales, but actually in basically the face of BBC News. And the guy also who did started doing the voiceovers for um, things like state occasions, monarchy stuff, and uh, uh, anniversaries of wars and so on and so forth. And it was great to hear that, to hear this man and his voice being recognized as having gravitas in that sense, having a presence which wasn't disrespectful just because it wasn't received pronunciation in that sense. But unfortunately, he turned out to have very unhealthy interests in people he shouldn't, young people who he shouldn't. So, it's just been a bit of a punch in that sense in the accent world. For me, at least, it was a bit like, oh no, that was good representation. But now actually they're scrubbing him out of archive broadcasts. So yeah, and I think they actually even brought back Dimbleby for a recent event, for one of the D-Day events. They brought, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, voices are wonderful. and and I absolutely love them. It's a bit much scrubbing him out. I I think so. I think so. And this whole thing that people complain about, cancel culture, or whatever, um, is I think the people complaining about it often have the biggest platforms. So in that sense, I'm not sure it really applies to them. But I think literally changing archival footage isn't great. It's a little bit, unnecessary. But then again, there are reasons, and we also have to be aware of, of victims and this kind of thing. Did ancient peoples use speech as class signifier too? They did. They definitely did. Actually, we know that that not only accents, but also actually literal dialects, but also writing styles would change between different groups. Most often signified by essentially income brackets. Excuse me. But also out of that came a sort of informal and formal versions of the one I'm thinking of right now is Latin. So the informal version of Latin that was floating around, and also aspects of Greek as well, in France, in Gaul, more or less moved towards being French at some point. So, but that's a very complex thing, very complex process. But definitely how people sound, and specifically things like the shorthand or the notation that they might use could be and would be connected to how they would come across. Exactly, yeah. We know how upper class Pompeians spoke due to graffiti. We know how people in various stratas of society represented themselves because of graffiti as well. So we did the same thing after 9/11. Oh, why? What was altered after 9/11? There, I'm curious. Presumably, there wasn't a problematic person. Rudy Giuliani. Sorry. No, but that was a long time ago. You wouldn't have to get rid of him, surely, would you? But yeah, maybe that's something that actually that could make for an interesting conversation at some point in some capacity, to really sort of examine, or just have some sort of, I don't know, exactly, sniffs in vulgar Latin, some sort of uh, live stream conversation or a podcast recording about it. That could be cool to have a chat about at some point. They scrubbed out the Twin Towers in a lot of films. Oh yeah. Spider-Man. Spider-Man had the Twin Towers in the trailer, in an early trailer for the film, like a teaser trailer, and then they scrubbed that from the movie entirely. Yeah. I bet you could take written animal noises to distinguish accents in language. Quite possibly. Quite possibly. I think it would require, presumably, various points of comparison, and a definitive. You need almost a sort of Rosetta Stone there to sort of say, okay, but this is how they represent this noise, and to our ear, this noise sounds this way, and then come up with a comparable. If you know that there are two different ways of writing that noise, come up with a comparable decision made about, I don't know, is it f or th, that kind of thing that's being used, and then be able to track that, and then maybe even infer something based upon that. That could be interesting. Yeah. There used to be a raven who could mimic regional accents. Don't know if he's still alive, but Terry, the talking raven. Okay. And is that in the US, like US regional accents, or oh, that's cool. I love the one of the things I truly love about the past. Just looking at the calendar here. It's the first of January 2025. Man, you should know what year it is. But in the past, let's say 10 years. Um, no, no, let's say 20 years has been the shift and the move uh, within the common perception of animals away from, oh, I wonder if they are intelligent, to accepting and understanding and in fact reveling in the different types of intelligence that are out there. Even within evolutionary anthropology, I remember when I was first introduced to some of these questions about, for example, chimps and culture within chimp groups, chimpanzees and different named individuals. Um, there was kind of like a speculation of like, well, and this also applied to Neanderthals. It was kind of case of, well, we can see this behavior, and of course, if we were doing this, this would mean blah 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 blah. But because they're doing it, we can't really say that it means blah 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 blah. So maybe we need to find a way to to understand what it might mean. Therefore, and it's not as simple as if it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. But the fact that complex behaviors, socialization, accents, for example, in the world of whales, whales, that is, not whales, um, and so many other forms of intelligence. The octopus is a recent one, isn't it? With the My Teacher, the Octopus, that wonderful film, um, and mimics the mimicry power of ravens and crows and parrots. Um, all these different forms of intelligence are now being recognized and celebrated, and I really love that. It feels as though for a long time academia in particular was just terrified to open the door to the idea that other animals had intelligence, because what makes us special then? Therefore, people would often say, "Oh, we use tools," and then someone would say, "Well, so does this animal, so does that animal." Okay, well, we have, and it's the complex mixture of things that each creature does that makes them who they are or what they are. So we have lots of different things that are mixed together in a particular way that, as far as we can tell, makes us fairly unique. But it doesn't take away from the abilities and the wonderful brains of other creatures. Um, Gorilla that's hunkering down and playing with their kids like any, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Octopuses and pigs, octopodes. Now, oh, what was it? Octopody. And then there was, what was the other one? Octopi. Now, I think octopi is often thrown around, but it's not the right one. It is octopodes, podes. Um, Our capacity for deception. Yep, deception. Which, interestingly, and again, this is where films like Arrival, if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. Denis Villeneuve, wonderful film. Raises interesting questions about the exactly, yes, yeah, Greek, not Latin. About just the ability to so, for example, deception. The effect of deception is to hide something from someone else, obviously, but the implication of deception is that you recognize that someone else is observing something in a way that is similar to how you observe it, and therefore you know how to hide it from their observation. And not only do you know how to hide it from their observation, but you're concerned that that intelligence over there is observing. And all of that implication can be mimicked or no, sorry, the convergent aspect of that is that the behavior can look very similar, even though it's not quite the same. So, for example, with a dog, not so much in deception, but certainly in terms of things like feeling shame. People often talk about dogs, hang tail, big eyes, lowering their heads because they feel shame for having broken something or whatever in the house, and you're like, bad dog. Dogs don't do that. They don't feel. It's been shown through observing the brain chemistry while they are in that state, while they are, in that sense, showing what's the word? Submission. They're not feeling guilt or shame. They are wanting to be in the good graces of whoever is part of their group. They want to be part of a group. So it can look like to us, but the mechanism behind it isn't quite the same. And so Arrival explores some of that stuff really beautifully in terms of just creating a linguistic base. The appearance of remorse, exactly, yeah. The problem with octos isn't their intelligence, it's that they don't live very long, yeah. No, that's true. We don't know how intelligent whales are, I guess. But we do know that they have very complex lives. And it's one of the things that I did enjoy about the sequel to Avatar: The Way of Water was Cameron just decided to make it so that the people could talk to the whales basically through sign language and communication through sort of noises and other ways of communicating, body language. He decided just to cross that threshold. But an awful lot of that was based on. He actually produced a documentary. I think it came out on National Geographic and on Disney Plus here, about whales and living with them and filming them basically. And that, along with so much other work that's been done, really shows the depth of feeling and, again, observation that whales have. The fact that whales have been known to just carry people to shore. Dolphins do the same as well. If someone's injured, they've been known just to push them to shore. Is a wonderful thing. But also that could be a form of what you're talking about there, Carrie. A cooperation drive. It could be actually a little bit like birds flying in a flock. What they're wanting to do is be in the middle of the flock, and out of that comes what looks like a sort of what would take in humans a complex assignment of your position within the structure. But actually, for schools of fish, for birds in the sky, it is the desire to be in the middle that creates this structure. So it could be that what we see in whales and dolphins as complex desires to help injured animals could be something more like an instinct, something more like appeasing a pack, or doing something a pack, or something which they do for each other, regardless of how they feel about it, if that's mean. Ensuring well-being and this kind of thing. But maybe I'm doing what we used to do for chimps and what we used to do for Neanderthals. Maybe I'm saying, well, it looks like it looks like the whale's trying to help people, but we can't be sure. Even though the whale has helped people. See it in civilization. We do, and this is where I always come back to one of my least favourite moments in. I'm going to ignore that, Lord Engine. I'm going to ignore that. One of my least favourite moments in Superman, in the Man of Steel, where someone says something along the lines of the morality, having a sense of ethics and looking out for other people is a form of weakness. Cold, hard decisions is what forges the path of evolution. But actually, it is one of the markers of civilization is, and actually human behavior is in fact the ability to look after people. It's caring and dare I even say loving, that actually is one of the big advantages that we have. Man of Steel was horrid anyhow. Yeah, unfortunately. Um, but it's a cultural buffer. They're cultural buffers is what we're talking about, and in that sense, cooperation is a key cultural buffer. The ability to say very simply, "I'll make some warm clothes so that you can go ice fishing, and bring me fish," is a way of splitting up labor, not just in terms of gender roles, but also in terms of just broader societal cooperation. And out of that comes what people call a civilization. Often it's deemed to be things like the production of excess, economic excess, so that farmers are making more than they need to just subsist upon. That leads to a broader cooperation and civilization. But I think all of this stuff we've been talking about is interwoven, and it's one of the reasons why the study of language is so important. So important. Hmm. Yeah, flora, fauna, terrain. Who's to say that you can't compare that to a complex system that we think of as being civilization? You know, the fact that these structures are precisely, yes, they're fighting against, in that sense, chaos, and maintaining a sort of order is crucial, and it's crucial to life, which is fundamentally, I guess, one of the definitions of civilization. Now, I'm using that phrase not as civilized versus uncivilized, but rather more in the sense of cooperation and uh, bigger systems coming out of this sort of mutual cooperation and cooperative living. Yeah. Now it occurs to me that the chat is not appearing on the screen, so hopefully this chat will appear in the. I'm pretty sure that there's a version of it that will appear in the VOD of this video on YouTube. There's a record made of it, so people, if they're curious about what's being said, then you will be able to see the chat as I'm seeing it. Scientific over philosophical. Or you could say philosophical over biological over positivistic versions of actually the logistical structures. It's stuff that we don't need to happen, even though we do actually need it to happen, but you know what I mean? Like, if you ask I don't know, someone on the street, what do you need for life? What do you need for your life to work? They'll talk about the economy. They'll talk about family. They'll talk about so on and so forth, but they're unlikely to talk about the relationship between nitrogen and carbon cycles and root systems and so on and so forth. Science is a philosophy. Do you know what? I have a science friend who would argue to the death with you over that. But then again, they don't like philosophy. They don't like the idea of working with. They don't see the point of philosophy in that sense. Science philosophy into the arts. Need more nitrogen, man. So glad you asked. Whoa. It does take creative minds, and whether or not he actually said it, supposedly, someone said, but it's attributed to Einstein, that uh, knowledge and imagination are crucial aspects of scientific inquiry, and the most crucial is imagination, for it can take you beyond what is already known. And this is something. This is actually a note that I stapled to the door of one of my housemates at uni, because he was such a he was a chemist, and he firmly believed that everything that everyone else was studying was pointless because it couldn't be analyzed and reduced to a sort of basic essentials, kind of like alchemy, I guess. Um, and I sort of stapled this Einstein quote to his door, because in that sense, the only reason that things change is because of the synthesis of knowledge and then a little bit of imagination that posits possibilities beyond what is already known. You know, otherwise, that's not what he said. Exactly. I don't think it is what he said. I did say, but it's often put in his direction, isn't it? I think. I have the files. But then again, people say that everything clever was said by Oscar Wilde at some point. You know, Wilde and Einstein, they have a lot of stuff put upon them, don't they? Discovery takes prediction. Well, yeah, and prediction takes experience, but it also takes the skills and the awareness that comes with some similar skills that are attached to things like um, uh, imagination, artistry, and creativity. Mm. He did say imagination is more important than knowledge, but not in that context. Okay, interesting, interesting. Uh, I don't think I necessarily stapled the quote to his door as being quoted by Einstein. I think I stapled it to his door as having been, it was a photograph taken from a note on the door of a lecturer in the chemistry department who said that, as Einstein says, blah, 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 blah. So it was, I knew, and I did frame it. I did frame it. But you have the files. You always have the files. A never-ending cycle of learning. Yeah, yeah, and I think that should apply to most things, especially things where we've previously had a book telling us what to think about something. You know, anything written down is out of date at some point, or requires a little bit of additional context at the very least at some point. Oh, dearie me. Well, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this live stream. I've had a good time. I certainly eked out an hour's worth of blabbering on and misquoting people for your entertainment and delight. Neil deGrasse Tyson has misquoted Einstein. Well, there you go. I'm in very good company. It's common. Oh. No. Now we're back to you there, Jones. You're common. No. It's not uncommon. Certainly, yeah. No, I agree. But I think regardless of the specific context, I think the way in which that quote was deployed on that guy's door does ring true. I think you probably do need to have. So that was clearly a very British chip on shoulder, wasn't it? Common. Um, yeah, I think it rings true that you need to have that combination of knowledge and imagination. First engaging conversation of 2025. Hooray! Good to know. Excellent. You're very welcome, Cylon. Hopefully, you guys are doing well there. What happened to the beachfront? Wasn't a pier, was it, that washed away? It sounded more like a slightly different structure. But are you guys even allowed down by the beach after that dramatic development? I know I'm asking you to probably type quite a lot there, but I'm curious. The bathroom, the wharf. That's it. Yes. Yes. Sorry, I'm just thinking about the security officer on Enterprise D. And latterly, DS9 as well. Not too much debris in the water. Oh, that's good. That's good. So was it? Did it actually go away, or was it just damaged in that sense? Lieutenant Worf, yes, Lieutenant Worf, who famously was once bested by a falling barrel in one of those episodes. People always thought of him as the hard guy who was going in and would be like, I will meet these warriors face on. And at one point, a barrel lands on him. And the reason for this, and this is something which I'm sure, in this evening's live stream, it's all about writing. The storytellers amongst us will appreciate is that you need something like Worf to be beaten by something else to demonstrate that there is danger. And therefore he just became the whipping boy for all the new life forms that they bumped into. He was raised on soft, flabby earth. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They closed the beaches because there were too much big debris. Oh, okay. Collapsed over delayed repairs. Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Worf is your imaginary boyfriend. Fair enough. I can imagine him being a good boyfriend. He's very real. Just where we start talking about purple gargoyles. He was raised on soft, flat earth. Yeah. Flat earth at first. Oh, God, yes. Oh, that poor boy, Alexander. Yeah. He's not portrayed as a great father, is he? No. Give you a dissertation on Goliath. Okay. Well, we're not. I'm gonna have to insist, folks, that we don't go down that rabbit hole this evening. In terms of flat Earth, maybe some other time. But it's been fun. I shall obviously catch you guys on the Discord server, in the after streams, etc. It is now midnight because I have rambled on, and I don't think we have time to dive into streaming the opening of Indiana Jones, but I shall do that tomorrow night, I think. So yeah, tomorrow night we shall do that. They just did 24-hour sun in Antarctica. Ooh, that's cool. Change one flat earther's mind. It's like planting seeds. Just plant those seeds, and we hope. You're very welcome, Michelle. Thank you for your entry. Thank you, Lord Engine, for your entry as well. And yeah, and here's hoping that once again that Nolan is doing well. I say this is the first year that he hasn't done an entry. What I will do is I'll make this live stream not public as we come to an end, as I say, because it's late. But in the morning, I shall put the chapters in there in the description so you can find the stories, and also upload the transcripts of the stories onto the website as well for reading in the coming days. So yes, look out for that in the next 12, 24 hours. Grand. Right, you guys, take care. Mwah! It's been fun. Bye. Bye.